Welcome back to another episode of Business, Bourbon, and Cigars. I'm your host, Scott Joseph, and today I'm going to dive into one of the most essential topics in today's fast-paced business world. That's building a culture of innovation. So why do some companies continuously innovate while others really struggle to keep up? How do you create a workplace where, the ideas thrive and the breakthroughs happen on a regular basis? Not just when you absolutely have to have it and you're probably reacting and it's maybe a little too late. These are the questions that we're going to answer today. And joining me is someone who's not only studied innovation, but also helped some of the largest organizations in the world build innovative cultures. And that's Nick Jain. Nick is the CEO of IdeaScale. It's a leading innovation software company that works with clients like, I don't know if it gets any more innovative than the company I'm about to say. So NASA, all right, Comcast, as well as like Doctors Without Borders. So Nick brings a wealth of knowledge, having graduated from Harvard Business School. And by the way, you're not the first Harvard grad, Nick, that has been on the show. You're like, believe it or not, I've had like four. It shocks me because I'm always impressed by that. And so I'm like, wow, we got a Harvard grad on the show today. Great. But he's led transformations across industries as diverse as literally trucking, men's shoes, obviously software. I think when people think about innovation, software probably jumps to the top of their list. But you're not going to want to miss this episode, because we're going to break down how to foster innovation within your business and the practical strategies that you can apply to start seeing results right now. So before we get started, if you haven't already, remember to subscribe to Me Plus Ultra at meplusultra.com and the Me Plus Ultra Network, our YouTube channel, so you never miss an episode. We try to bring you actionable insights each and every time so you can drive your business forward. So let's dive right in. Nick, welcome to Business, Bourbon, and Cigars.
Thank you for having me and for the very kind intro.
Well, listen, right now, I normally, and I'm going to start anyways, because I want our audience to understand where you're coming from and understand where your experience is and why they should be listening to you. But my gosh, you got me. So there's enough social proof there with NASA. All right. And then the Harvard grad, I'm like all day long. But talk to us, pretty incredible journey, right? You were raised by your grandmother in India, then went on to graduate Harvard. Share more about your personal background, how these experiences kind of shaped you as a leader.
Sure. So as you mentioned, I'm in some ways a very typical immigrant story. Was raised by my grandmother in India. Till the age of 4, I literally remember the town I was living in India. We had running water for half an hour in the morning and half an hour in the evening. And as a 3.5-year-old, when you had to fill up your water tanks, because if you didn't fill it up at 7:30 in the morning when you got your water, you didn't have water for the day, right? So not quite I didn't have to hike to a local well or something, but you had to a lot of responsibility as a kid. And then, had the good fortune of emigrating to Canada when I was around 5, went through typical public education system, really nice farm town, a lot of good friends and stuff. I think the most impactful thing kind of my upbringing has had on me is two things. Number one is the idea that a lot of people for decades have invested in me, right? My grandparents, my parents, it's been literally generations of investing to give me the opportunities I have, which has taught me the value of thinking long-term. So not just thinking ahead for the next, the day, the next quarter, the month, whatever, right? But thinking ahead, for over the long term. And that applies both my personal and professional life. But secondly, also kind of giving back, right? A lot has been contributed to me through my family, but also through the communities that have invested in me. And so I would love to give back. And that's a core part of who I am as a person. And obviously, I may not be able to give back to my grandparents, they've passed, but to whoever, to pay it forward, to use that old movie quote. And then the second thing I think that my upbringing has taught me is, hard work pays off, right? You mentioned, kind of dropped the Harvard name a couple of times, but it's possible, right? It's not just for the kids at Billionaire. Certainly we had some of those in my class, but you can hard work pays off. It just takes a lot of hard work and consistency sometimes over years. And I really value that, and that shows in my professional life as well, where like I value the notion of just grinding that people I think underappreciate. That you need to have, you need to be brilliant, or you need to be like 7 feet tall you could just grind and grind and grind in whatever field of endeavor you are, whether that be arts, sports, business. And there is a tremendous payoff to just working hard and dedication over time.
Yeah, entrepreneurs, which makes up a large part of our audience, not the ones who have been successful. They understand what it takes in terms of, what it's going to take to grow a company, scale it. But a lot of people that come into it, I think, underestimate the amount of effort, of what it's going to take to really be successful or to live what they had in their head going into it, right? So you're the CEO of IdeaScale, and the whole company's focused on innovation. What drew you to lead that?
Sure. So it was a couple things. So IdeaScale's been around 15 years. I'm not, the founder. A couple other guys came up with the idea. But how I ended up here was kind of totally coincidental. About 2 years ago, I'd been, co-run or co-CEO'd a couple of different companies at that point. And someone who I'd met several years ago gave me a call and said, "Hey, Nick, we have this really cool company. Would you like to be CEO?" And when you're in your late 20s, early 30s, and someone says, "Hey, do you want to be CEO of something?" You kind of jump at the opportunity. It's a tremendous professional opportunity. But then secondly, what IdeaScale specifically did was like an exciting product that I loved. One of my big frustrations throughout my career has been like, hey, why does in any large organization, why is only the senior most person's voice matter? Like no one cares what the junior guy says, even if he or she has a great idea. And that really pissed me off throughout my career. IdeaScale's literal product is how do we get the best ideas to the top, regardless whether they're from someone on the other side of the world, somebody who speaks broken English, someone who's junior, regardless of what they look like. Let's make the best ideas rise to the top. And that's like something, again, that's pissed me off in my career. And I love working at a company that's the problem we actively solve.
Well, and if you think about it, gosh, I'm going to throw something out there. I got a theory on this. And I'm just right or wrong. Some of the best ideas come from people that are a little bit lazy. And I use that, I generalize, and here's what I mean by that. Lazy people if they don't want to work hard, they find ways. They're pretty innovative, finding ways to get things done quicker and more efficiently. In other words, why am I doing it this way? I'd rather just do this. And sometimes we discount that, right? And lazy is a horrible word to use, but you know where I'm going with that. Some of our best ideas come from the people that are involved in the stuff day to day. And they're like, this takes me forever. I could just do it so much quicker if they just let me do this. And I think a lot of people think of innovation as a new product or a new service, but innovation also comes on in our processes that we have in day to day as well, right?
Yeah.
I'll let you kind of.
Two reactions. Firstly, the sentiment you expressed is actually there's a famous quote I learned in my childhood that stayed with me. It's the reasonable man adapts himself to the world. The unreasonable man adapts the world to him. Therefore, all progress depends on the unreasonable man. It's that sentiment of like lazy people just want to do things easier and make the world adapt to their way of doing things.
Exactly.
But yeah. Yeah. So look, about your sentiment of like the types of innovation there are, like I often say there's 3 types of innovation. There's number one, doing something you're already doing better, right? Like you can hammer in a nail with a rock, or you can use a hammer or an air hammer. Those are just better ways to do the same thing, right? But you can take a nail, bring it into 2x4 with a rock. So that's one type of innovation, like incremental progress, figuring out how to do something you were already doing, just better. Second is parallel innovation, which is figure out something you're doing already, but doing it in a very dramatically different way. So you can ship a phone from China to the United States in a boat, in a plane. You might be able to do it, well, not from the China, but you could do it by rail if it's to Europe, right? But each of those have pros and cons. You don't necessarily want to ship it by plane because that's really expensive. So there's pros and cons of that. And then the third is orthogonal innovation, where just something comes out of left field that is absolutely crazy, game changing. And you need all three types of those. Like humanity has advanced not just by game changing innovations, but all three of those where you've made small incremental changes, you've made some changes that have pros and cons to them, and then just something that crazy that comes out of left field, like the chat GPTs of the world.
Yeah. We'll call those the breakthroughs, right? Those are the groundbreaking and the transformations. And those tend to make people very wealthy. And so, but you can't, and I feel like some people, I'm glad you brought up all these three, because I feel like some people feel like it's one or the other, right? There is no meter. And I've interviewed another innovation person on here. Well, it's a topic I love. It's a topic I want to keep talking about because I think it's so critical. But he talks a lot about the small incremental changes that you brought up as well. And I think some people think I either need to look only there or only here. And to me, how do you navigate? How do you coach people, or what's your advice to people on being able to do all of it?
Sure. So I think the first piece of advice I give is, like, philosophically, you have to believe that you need to get better every day. Right. And that's true whether you're going to the gym, whether you're running a tiny startup or you're running a big company. Right. You have to be committed to getting better every day. The second is the world is a crazy, unpredictable place. Like, you don't know whether this new idea that someone came up with is just incremental or it's revolutionary. Right. So you can't just be, to your point, you can't just be on the hunt for those breakthrough ideas because you don't know where those breakthrough ideas are going to come from, but you also may not be able to recognize them like ex ante, right? Like if someone was, imagine the pitch idea for ChatGPT 6 years ago. We're just going to have a smarter chatbot. That's not revolutionary. That would have been, there are 1,000 chatbots out there, right? So the average person who was thinking about ChatGPT, like, the pitch 6-7 years ago was like, it's just another chatbot. Who the hell cares? So the advice I'd give is, like, look for innovation everywhere and don't prejudge it, because you don't know the impact it can have on you, your organization, or the world. No one is that kind of all-seeing and all-knowing. I certainly am not.
What excites you? Like what going in and helping businesses innovate, right? Like what excites you about that?
I think two things. Number one is I like seeing things change. I love the idea of things getting better and changing in any aspect of life. Number two is I like having made a difference. This is a very personal thing. Like, I show up to work every day because I like knowing that I've created jobs, that I've created value for my customers, for my shareholders. I like making a difference. And I don't mean in a fuzzy, way, but like, it doesn't have to be at a world stage. I just like knowing I made a difference. And for my clients, for example, we're very good at saying, hey, you actually got better today versus last year. And that's something that's really good. And because we know we played a part in that.
It goes back to what you said about, kind of your personal journey. When you say you want to give back, right? Or you want to give. Is there any more joy than whether it's uniting two people that can help each other, or coming up with an idea, or help guiding them in a way that some type of innovation, some groundbreaking, transformational type of product, service, whatever it might be for them, process, and watching that impact. It just aligns awesome with your personal mission. I love it.
Yeah, you feel really good at the end of the day, at the end of the month, end of the year, when you gave or made a difference, right? In any aspect of life. That could be business, that could be your family, that could be your church, whatever it is, right? Very few people get joy from taking. Almost all people get joy in life or meaning in life from giving something back.
It's funny. Did you ever go on the app when it first came out, Clubhouse?
I did not know.
So I was an early adopter to it, and I haven't been on there in probably 12 months. But it came out during COVID, right? So everyone's craving some type of social interaction. So, which is probably one of the reasons the engagement was so high back then. But going exactly to what you just said, when you'd get up on stage and people would come up, with young entrepreneurs or inexperienced young entrepreneurs would come up, and they'd be asking us questions. How do you guys handle client retention? How do you handle your onboarding of new employees, or how are you retaining your top talent? What's the best way to acquire? All the challenges we all have. How can I fix my sales model? How can I get more leads? It's all the same challenges. It doesn't matter what business you're in or vertical you're in.
Mm-hmm.
What I loved most, I love the connections and the relationships I met there, but helping people out and being able to sit there and answer their questions and hopefully give them something that they could take back. And it was a dopamine. It literally was this, it almost became addictive to do it. I mean, you just got off the calls feeling so good, and it goes right to what you're saying. And so I'm a big believer in that. And I tell these people in our leadership retreats all the time, it's like, guys, don't come into this event thinking, how am I going to benefit? Worry more about how you're going to help everybody in this room. The more you give, the universe works in some strange ways. And it's really not that strange. It's almost like the more you give, it comes back to you tenfold. But be sincere in why you're giving. You're not giving to get back, right? You're giving because you want to sincerely help whoever you're trying to help. And watch what happens. And it's a magical thing. I love the energy you bring into this interview. I don't know if people are watching or listening, right? But if they're watching it, they could, well, first off, if they're listening to it, they can hear it in your voice, your tone, your pace. But if they're watching it, it matches, completely congruent. I just love it. And I can see why you're successful in what you do. There's a lot of big companies out there, all the resources in the world, and they really struggle. At one point they were innovative or they wouldn't have become big, right? And now they're not. Why is that? What's that challenge? How do they fix it?
Sure. So it's literally because they're big, right? Big is kind of anathema to innovation. Think about it like this. Imagine you're setting up a factory to make widgets, could be cars, could be socks, whatever, right? That factory gets really good and really efficient at making socks. Okay, but let's imagine you tell that now you need to make a different color sock, or you need to make a car, right? Or you need to and people stop wearing socks because they're all wearing sandals now, right? That's where large companies struggle, because they have become so good at doing whatever they were set up to do that it's kind of against their very nature to go do something else. Where that's the exact opposite of a startup, because like you always hear about startups pivoting, right? You don't hear about like Pfizer pivoting because they can't, right? If you're six people sitting around a room, in a WeWork or in somebody's garage, like the classic Silicon Valley trope, you don't like your product, it doesn't fit, you switch, right? You pivot. For large companies, the way they need to solve that is kind of A, cultural shift, and B, a process and technology shift, and C, an incentive shift, right? Like in the big company, the incentives is really important, something that we can go into each of those three, but like, it's basically big companies disincentivize people from doing creative things, unfortunately. And it's actually fixable. It's not an unfixable problem. It's just they're not thinking about it.
I'm glad you I'm sitting here when you're talking, I'm thinking back in my own head, some of the challenges I've had. When you got a new product, man, it's easy to pivot. I'm not talking about a whole product from your core. I'm talking about, all right, we just created something else that complements whatever we're doing. We put it out there. We think it's great. And then if you're a good company, right, you're listening to your client feedback and you realize, well, what we thought hit the mark, it's close, but it really needs to do this, this, and this. And so you quickly adjust, change it, do what you need to do, because that's a client that the clients are saying, this is what we really want from something like this. That's an easy pivot. That makes everybody happy. That makes your salespeople happy. It makes your clients happy. It makes right. And then eventually the business. But I also had to go through another pivot. All right. I have an agency, and in the 90s, even through the first half of the first decade of the 2000s, it's all direct mail, eventually email, eventually landing pages. Those are easy things. But then it was time to go full on digital. And that required a complete pivot on the company. My salespeople who were established, had relationships, had a unique way of selling something, were making good money, now had to learn something that had a longer selling cycle, required a lot more product knowledge, all kinds of things that went into it. And by the way, I was bringing in a new president. I was working my way out of the day-to-day and bringing in it. So we had a perfect storm of shit going on. All right. And you know what? The only one of the three you mentioned that I worried about, and this is why this pivot took so long to be successful. All I worried about was what I thought they cared about, incentivize. So I made the pay plans and I incentivized to get this thing going and really, but I didn't think enough about obviously products in there. But that was new to us back then too. So we're learning our way, but I didn't think and pay attention enough to the culture of the shift. Talk to us a little bit about, I'm curious, like when you don't do those three that you mentioned, what happens? Like, what are some of the dynamics that if you don't do this, this is what's going to happen. This is what you need to avoid.
Sure. So the analogy I love to use is a stool, right? Stools always have three legs. If you have two legs, the stool falls over, right? It could balance for a few seconds, but eventually it falls over. So the three legs you need to have innovation is you need a culture that actually believes innovation is important. You need some process and technology that makes it a habit, right? Think of it almost like gym equipment. It's a lot easier to work out when you have a rowing machine, a treadmill, bike, or whatever, easily accessible either in your house or at a local gym, right? Or running shoes. That could be your equipment. And then thirdly, you need the incentives. So if you're missing any one of those three, your innovation kind of fails. By culture, there's kind of both a good way and bad way to look at like innovation culture. Either you can think innovation's fun or you can be paranoid. And my favorite quote about innovation is, if you're not innovating, your competitors certainly are, right? Your competitors didn't just stop getting better just because you are happy today and you're rich today. In terms of process and technology, look, it's great to tell everyone to innovate, and it's easy to tell somebody to go get in shape, but like you got to give them a pair of runners and some weights or something, right? Like it doesn't have to be super fancy. You can go with the Rolls Royce of software like ours, but you can also give them some basic technology or processes to like go do it. Don't just say go be smart and go be creative. That's a terrible way to innovate, which is I think and then you got to incentivize them. The incentives is like, think of it like this. Why do people go do startups? Because they want to be famous. They want to make a bunch of money. They want to do something cool. Let's imagine you come up with something cool in a big organization. Are they going to pay you? No. Are they going to reward you? No. You're just some junior guy who invented something. Company's going to take your credit. They may not even recognize you, right? And they may even kill your idea. It may be a great idea, and they will just say, like, screw it. It's 5 years out on a roadmap. So you like disincentivize people from doing awesome things in large organizations. Again, very different for a small organization where like, if Joe in accounting has a great idea, even though you're a tech company, you're going to do Joe's idea because you're like 10 feet away from the boss or the CEO. That's not true when you maybe, 1,000 miles and 8 levels of seniority away from the CEO of XYZ famous company.
So talk to me about this. Like, let's say we got people listening to this show. And listen, every business owner sits back and wishes they were more innovative as a company. Doesn't mean they're good. So whether you're a startup, whether you're a big and established organization, like talk to me about, let's say it's me. I want to make sure I want a culture of innovation and I want to do it right. I don't want it to be just something that we throw up against the wall and put a couple slogans on the wall and don't really live to. We don't live that promise, right? I want to live to. I want to be that. Where do I start? How do you set this up successfully?
Sure. I think the very first is going back to that culture point. And culture requires you to be honest with yourself. So ask, do I actually care about this? Am I actually trying to get better? And let's, cut the BS, like ask, did I do something today to make myself better than I was yesterday? And you can ask this at an individual level, a team level, an organization level. And if you're honest with yourself and you say, yes, good, you're headed in the right direction. And if you're honest with yourself and you say no, then you're not headed in the right direction, but at least you've acknowledged that and you can correct it. And if you're dishonest with yourself and everyone, as you kind of said, like everyone thinks they're innovative, but are they really being honest with themselves? Like, using an example that's happening right now, Intel for 40 years was the semiconductor company. Intel Inside was in everything. And they're absolutely being crushed by NVIDIA and all these other, because Intel did not innovate. If they'd looked around the room and like kind of looked themselves in the mirror, like 5 years ago or 10 years ago and said, are we innovating when all these AI chips are coming up? Or is it NVIDIA going to kick our butts? or AMD for that matter, which they might have come to a very different conclusion. So that sense of reflection and honesty, that's the first step. Like, are you being innovative? And you should be able to point to something actually concrete that you did better today than you did last week, last quarter, last month, whatever. And if you can't do that, then the answer is no, and you need to make a change.
All right. So then, but what are the changes? Like, I guess what I'm looking for is give me a process. Give me some things that
Sure.
innovative cultures do, whether it's daily, weekly versus the ones that don't, right?
Sure. So the first thing you do is you get a ton of ideas on how you can be better. And this could be again, better at like, your work schedule, which is like, hey, I'm going to calendar my life out. I'm going to work, really consistently 9 to 5, not watch YouTube videos. Get all those ideas together in one place, right? That could be on a notepad, that could be our software, whatever it is. Get all the ideas in one place, and then figure out which ideas are doable versus not doable. Some of them might be terrible ideas, right? Your entire brainstorming session may have been filled with crap ideas. But then get the good ones, rank them, and then pick one or two of them that are applicable to you and achievable and will derive impact. Because what you want to do is create a virtuous cycle. Because if you pick an item that's going to take 5 years for you before you get the benefits from it, you're going to give up after a year or two. At least when you're starting out your innovation process, pick things that you can do quickly and you will see the impact from it on your personal or professional life, right? Like, don't pick things that that are going to take a long time to achieve. Otherwise, you're going to lose motivation very quickly along the way.
So you've worked with, one end of the spectrum, NASA, to the other, Doctors Without Borders. Give us examples of how they've fostered kind of an innovative mindset.
Sure. So I'll give NASA's example, right? NASA is obviously, look, they've done some extraordinary things. People to space, first people on the moon, right? NASA's big challenge is it's now being competed against by all these private space organizations, SpaceX, Blue Origin from Bezos. SpaceX is, I think, Elon Musk's. You have more competition from like the Chinese Space Agency, the Indian Space Agency. And now, there's an increasing commercialization of space. So number one, I think NASA's done a really good job at realizing, look, we're not the only players in the world anymore. 60 years ago, NASA was, the only game in town. Today, if you want to stick satellites in space, you don't have to go to NASA. You can go to the Russians or the Chinese or the Indians or like SpaceX, right? So there's a greater sense of urgency. And I think they've done a really thoughtful job at realizing, look, we're not the only game in town. So we got to get our, not get our act together, but like we need to be better. Way better because like we got competition, and they made that as a very conscious realization, both as an organization as well as at a national U.S. level, where the U.S. government realized, look, we need to stay relevant in the geopolitical world that we're living in today. We need to kind of be more forward technologically, process-wise. Number two, I think NASA's done a really good job that they have. Rather than being an entirely top-down pyramid organization, which is a really inefficient way to run an organization from an innovation perspective, they have pods. NASA has research centers that operate semi-independently. Obviously, they end up reporting to some director at some point, but the idea that you can have a bunch of different little pods or little, not startups, but organizations competing at each other or pursuing different agendas, that's really cool because it means like one person doesn't bottleneck or gunk up the entire thing, or one person who's regressive in his or her thinking doesn't slow down the entire innovation pipeline. Because if 3 of your research centers suck, great, you still have 8 more that can continue doing something cool. And finally, NASA has done a really good job at both the process and technology part as well as the incentive part. Like you hear when NASA does something cool, you hear about it. They mention the name of their astronauts or the scientists, right? Like they reward people. As a government agency, they can't pay people like insane amounts of money for like their new cool technology idea, but they acknowledge those people. They give them, kudos. They give them academic recognition in journals. They put them on YouTube videos. Who was that NASA astronaut? Well, he was a Canadian astronaut who sang Major Tom while sitting in a space station, right? Like, and that video went viral. Like NASA does these kind of things that it can, despite being a government agency, to acknowledge and reward people for their extraordinary contributions. And that's really motivating to people, right? Like NASA can't pay you private sector salaries necessarily, but they're still going to make you feel rewarded for your contributions to their organization, to the national interest, and to science.
You talk about idea Meritocracy, right? First off, explain to our audience what you mean by it, and then why is it so important?
Okay, an idea meritocracy, I'll give a theory and a practical example. An idea meritocracy is when the best idea wins, no matter who it came from or where it came from. A practical example is when I submit an idea to IdeaScale about how our product should get better, and I get 50 downvotes, and I'm the CEO of the company, and my idea is down at the bottom, and people feel comfortable to do that, to vote the idea CEO's ideas crap. That's an idea meritocracy in action. Yeah. And that happens all the time, by the way. You can go see my ideas on our public forums being downvoted.
Yeah. And so talk to us like, all right, so if we're building this, I mean, to me, it makes sense, right? But if we're building this and we really want to have some type of innovative culture, why is that so important?
Look, if you're not innovating, I'll go back to what I said a moment ago, which is if you're not innovating, your competitors certainly are, right? If no matter how successful, no matter how famous, no matter how rich you are as an individual, as an organization, you are going to get superseded because someone out there is hungry and they want, your lunch. So that's why it's most important to innovate, because if you're not getting better, like your fame and fortune only last a little while, everything's kind of fleeting in life. Right. And that's true both at an individual level as well as at an organizational level. That's why it's important to innovate. And that is like the reason why idea meritocracies are important is like, no matter how smart you are as an individual, you are not going to be smarter than the sum total of 100 people or 1,000 people. Like, I'm a really bright person, but am I smarter than the other 99 people at IdeaScale combined? Absolutely not. Right? It would be incredibly incredibly hubris. I'm stumbling on the word. It would be an example of extreme hubris, like Greek tragedy level hubris, for me to think I'm smarter than everybody else. And now imagine you're the CEO of like a major, multi-billion-dollar corporation where you have 10,000 people working for you. Do you really believe you and your like 8 people sitting in the boardroom are smarter than the other 10,000 people, or your research scientists, your customer service people, the people who are actually meeting your customers every day, right? Like, absolutely not. So you want their ideas because they are going to be great ideas. Not all the time, but enough of the time where their ideas can change your organization in a really, really cool way.
Well, if you think about like if you ask business leaders, what are some of their biggest challenges, right? Whether they say it or not, I would say differentiating themselves, differentiating their business is one of their biggest challenges. And if you ask a lot of businesses, what makes you unique? What's your unique selling proposition? I think some would struggle giving us a very compelling argument as to why they're different or better than someone else, especially if you're dealing in something that is considered a commodity, right? And the marketplace, no matter what you're selling, wants to paint you into that commodity corner, because once you're a commodity, the prices go down, right? And it's just common. And so to me, without innovation, if you want to fix and really be different, and sometimes different is better than better. So if you really want to be different, your priority has to be innovation, because it's the only way to be different. It's the only way. If all you're doing is copying and it's not innovative, and you're just pretty soon everybody just copies the same best practices and everyone's just common, and it becomes even more difficult to differentiate yourself. And then you're stuck with unique selling propositions of like, well, we've been in business 25 years. We're family owned. These are the common things that people say. And it's just like that's not what's moving. I want to know how you're going to save me time, effort, money. That's what I want to know. What makes you different? What makes you unique that's going to do those things for me? So I think, how does someone, to me, if it's an innovative culture, it's happening daily, weekly, whatever it might be. It's an ongoing thing, right? It's built into the DNA. So how does an executive make sure that happens, and how do they balance, because they got a business to run, right? So how do they make sure it just isn't this one-off, like, all right, here's our year-end meeting. It's time to innovate, right? So how do they balance that?
Yeah, well, look, if you're discussing innovation or like getting better once a year at your annual board meeting, your shareholders, you've lost the race at that point, right? You got as to your earlier point, it's got to be built into your DNA. So you need a process to innovation, right? Like let's use the analogy of you want to get in shape, right? Let's imagine you want to run fast, you want to get jacked, whatever it is.
This is a
How do you
good
do it?
one for me because I continuously try to innovate easier ways to do this. But go ahead.
Yeah, I'm not saying anything about you. I'm trying to get in shape myself. So the way I do it is I created a process that look, I joined a running club and every morning at 6:30, I wake my butt up and go for a run. Cold drizz. I hate the cold. I still do it. I created a process, right? And I created some technology. I bought some running shoes and I got myself a gym membership, right?
Yep.
So I created a process to achieve my goals. If innovation is a goal, it's no different. You can't just stick someone in a room and say go be creative, right? The idea of the freak genius who's sitting in a dark room by himself or herself comes up with that eureka moment. That's a myth. That's not how real innovation happens, right? You stick someone in a dark room and say go get in shape, they're not going to get in shape. So the way you achieve that as a company is create a real process. There's different ways to do it, right? For example, our software says like collect all the ideas from everyone continuously, let the best ideas automatically float to the top and get noticed. No different than like a viral TikTok video floats to the top because it's like everyone realized this is a really cool dance video or really ridiculous cat video. We do that for ideas. Organizations should do that as part of their culture, that there is a continuous way for ideas. They could be well-baked ideas or half-baked ideas to float their way to the top where people in power can notice them. So let's not kid ourselves, right? Like the average junior person in the company or organization has very limited power. Even if they have a great idea and their voice can be heard, they have very little power to actuate those ideas. So you need a way for not only those ideas to gather, but for them to be naturally put in front of the people who have the ability to make that decision or to turn it into reality. And so you need that nice kind of natural channel or river that continuously is bringing ideas and opportunities in front of the people who can say, yep, great. And you need those people to then also like actually care, right? Because if you're like some, bureaucrat who doesn't care about a way to make your organization better, when those good ideas pass you by, you're just going to let them float downstream. You don't care. You need to have someone in those positions of power in your organization that cares about being better tomorrow. And that ties into the culture thing. Like really, organizations shouldn't have anybody in any decision-making capacity that doesn't care about being better, right? If they're happy with their job and their organization, they're killing your organization day by day.
Well, and you've talked about win-win outcomes, whether it's for clients, employees, shareholders. I mean, it kind of all aligns with that, right?
Yeah, look, my job as CEO is literally to balance those three constituents, right? I got to create a product that my customers like enough and value enough that they're willing to pay me. Then I can pay my employees and create nice, stable employments for them and give them raises. And along the way, I can create value for my shareholders who, put a lot of their money at risk to build this business in the first place. And the only way I do that, going back to your point about like, hey, everyone kind of begins copying each other. The only way I can continuously give my employees more raises next year or my shareholders more value is I have to make my organization better today, right? Whether that be new features, better services, higher quality software, whatever it is. Otherwise, I'm failing all three of my constituents tomorrow. Like everything I say about innovation, it's not just true for large organizations. I'm a mid-sized organization. I worry about this every day.
Yeah. As soon as you said that, what popped into my head was, gosh, I love the parallels that happen within business. You could say the same thing about hiring people. All right. You just said, if I want to help my clients, the best thing I can do is help my company and my employees, right? Because obviously the healthier the company is, it allows you to do it. You're going to be able to reward people. You're going to have a better culture. It gives you the opportunity to have a better culture. People like winning, and better cultures tend to do better by their clients. It's the same thing when you hire people. The best thing you can do for your A players is hire other A players, because there is nothing worse than hiring poor performers, because all that means is all your A players just have to pick up the slack. Right. And it hurts your culture. And so as soon as you said that, it just popped into my head. I'm working on something where from a culture, building a culture of accountability. And that was something kind of one of the topics. But to me, it all works the same way. Give us some things that you've seen. Let's say you're coming into my company. All right. We hired you. Our innovation's decent, but man, we really want to take it up to the next level. What are some of the most common things that you immediately advise people to do right out of the gate? And you've kind of mentioned some of them, but I want people to walk away from this show and be like, I'm doing that tomorrow. I'm doing that right,
Number one, I'll give two very tactical suggestions.
Yeah.
Number one, go get software like ours. For example, my software is 100% free for people that are below 100 people in organization size, right? So if you're less than 100 employees, your software is free. Get some way that you can listen to your employees' ideas. If you're 5 people, go get like a paper box or like a whiteboard or something, right? Like Post-it notes, whatever it is. Get some way that people could suggest ideas and tell them you actually give an F about what they're saying. Right, and that could be about the snacks in the break room. That could be about ways to make your company better. Show people that you value their ideas, their contributions. Number two is go evaluate your reward system, your incentive systems. Like the classic example is sales. Sales is easy. If somebody sells something, you give them a commission. What do you give? Ask yourself honestly, as a leader in your organization, what do you give someone who came up with a great idea? Do you give them a pat on the back? Does that make a difference to them? Like, you give your sales commissions, your sales guys juicy commissions. Do you give your people value for their ideas? Do you give them like a kudo? Do you give them like a shout out on LinkedIn? Like something that makes, and it has to make a difference to them. Don't give them some BS like pat on the back, because that doesn't change somebody's day or make them go home and feel good. Give them something that makes a difference. That could be money. That could be, promotions. Because if you're not, like, they have no you don't create that virtuous cycle. And that's the thing you really want to achieve really quickly, is creating a virtuous cycle where someone knows if they make things better, they're going to go home and feel good about themselves, whether that be from a money, from a pride, from a promotion, whatever it is. That's easy to fix. Incentive schemes are the easiest things to fix. It's just no one cares about them because it's, they're kind of HR things that people stick in the back office rather than like front office things.
Yeah. And thank you. I always want people to walk away and be like, all right, I can apply that. It's like when I walk away from an event or a workshop, or maybe I read a book, I'm always, if I'm reading a book, right, I'm taking notes. Nobody wants a book after I read it. All right. Because it's tore to crap. I mean, it's just notes, bent pages, this and that. Mm-hmm. Here's all tabs. Here's my ideas. I want to take, I want to take the things and like, all right, I got to come back to this because I think I can apply this. I can do this. It can work in this type of process. I can integrate that here. So I love that. All right. So you've worked in all kinds of different industries. We mentioned, like, first off, how do you go from NASA? I got to ask it. How do you go from men's shoes to NASA?
So to be clear, I never worked at NASA. NASA's a client. I did work in men's shoes.
All right.
So look, over the course of my career, I worked in finance, trucking, men's shoes, and now B2B software at IdeaScale. B2B software is a really cool startup. They'd figured out a way to rent really high-end sneakers to men. So like things like Yeezys and Air Jordans and things like that. And they gave me a call up one day and said, hey, do you want to come help us run our marketing and finance? And that was a really cool opportunity because I'd never worked in fashion before. I'd never worked in B2C e-commerce. So really cool career opportunity. And then somewhere along the way, somebody else gave me a call and said, hey, do you want to help take IdeaScale to the next stage of growth? And that's something, as I mentioned earlier in this call, like really aligned with both a great professional opportunity for me, as well as like it aligns with what I think is a really cool product.
How does Ideas? How do you guys? I'm curious about this because, for instance, I always use myself as examples. Our agency, we're great at marketing for others. We're horrible at marketing for ourselves. Horrible, right? We're getting better. How do you guys? So it's easy to help people become better innovators, right? How do you guys do it?
Yeah. First of all, I'd say it's hard to help people become innovative. Let
me clarify. It's easier to do it for others. In other words, what I mean is because your focus is on your clients, right?
Yeah.
You're putting more time and energy into your clients, and sometimes we neglect ourselves.
Sure. So look, I like to say we eat our own cooking, or as one of my colleagues says, drink our own champagne, right? So I go out and sell the software to try and convince customers that, hey, this software helps make you become more innovative. If I actually believe that, I should use the software myself, right? Which we do, right? So we use our software inside we determine our marketing campaigns that way. We determine what product features, and it's a true idea meritocracy. So as the example I gave earlier on this call, you see Nick's ideas being downvoted. Some of my ideas get upvoted, some get downvoted. And that's how we decide what we are doing next year, next month, next quarter for building our product, changing our marketing campaigns, new technical changes to our engineering team. So what we try and do, there's two things I think we do to be innovative. Number one is we actually use our own software to build an idea meritocracy. And number two is we try and consistently genuinely believe that we have to be better tomorrow. Just so whatever we did yesterday is not good enough. There's this hunger that tomorrow we got to be better.
And that's important because it's very easy as you scale up to sit there and come up with ideas and be like, oh, we're already doing well. This is going to require us to do this, and this. But what I love about you've almost got this built-in innovation process, because if you're using your own product, my God, there's got to be times where you're like, why in the heck are we doing this? Why isn't this doing this for me? Why isn't this software doing this for me? I would love that because it's like this automatic. You're becoming more innovative and you're helping clients all at the same time. It's perfect.
So literally that. So if you go, check out ideas.ideascale.com, which is our public facing, you'll see me as the CEO complaining why does this button work this way? It doesn't make sense. It's hard for me to use as an end user. It's preventing me from making things better. So
I love that.
Literally
That's
it was good. Not only complaints, but me sometimes I say oh, this is really cool. Here's how we can make it better. Right. So it's a really cool way how we, do need to get better every day. And I think, software companies, especially, it's the most tangible way because all of us are releasing new features every year, whether, you're us or Microsoft OpenAI, right? So yeah, it's drinking our own champagne, but hopefully not getting drunk off it.
Yeah. Well, every now and then. How do you know if your innovation efforts are successful? Are there certain metrics you're looking at? What is it?
Sure. So this is something our customers always ask us. Okay, everyone wants to measure, did we create an impact? And how you define impact is very different based on the type of organization you're on, right? If you're a private sector corporation, it's easy. Did you sell more stuff? Did you make more revenues? Did you reduce costs? That's easy. If you're a nonprofit, it may be how many people did you serve? If you're a government agency, it's did you serve people better, or did you help achieve a certain goal for your country, right? It could be, did you make the military better, or did you reduce poverty, whatever it is. So one of the things we really encourage people to do is, number one, define what success is in a measurable way. Right. I personally am a believer that if you can't measure it, it's not real. Right. If you can't measure the reps at the gym or how many dollars you saved, it's not real. So we encourage our clients to define a metric. Number two, figure out a way to measure that metric continuously. It may be an imperfect measure, but you need to be able to measure it. And then be honest with yourself, evaluate at the end of your period. That could be daily, quarterly, monthly, yearly, whatever it is, but evaluate it and be honest with yourself. Did you achieve, did your metric improve? Right? Did you serve more people as a nonprofit? Did you generate more products as a company? And if the answer is no, then go back and innovate on your process to innovate.
Yeah. Well said. This could get away from people, I think. So let's talk about the importance for executives to understand the finance part of this stuff, especially, when they want this, we want to be more innovative and it's time to start implementing some of this stuff. Talk to us about the impact and why their understanding on the finance part so critical.
So it's funny that you asked that. My background was in Wall Street, right? So I got really good at, at understanding how a business works, how it makes money. Let's start with number one. We live in a capitalist economy. And if you don't understand how your business works and your business is imploding, eventually that hurts and your organization shuts down. Now, the second reason why I'm kind of chuckling is in the tech world, there's so many leaders and visionary, kind of especially visionary leaders who are great at like coming up with a product, but are terrible at understanding how to run a business, right? And what does this business actually make money? So that's why you hear all these high flying startups that then shut down overnight because they weren't a real business. They were like selling filet mignon for $5 a pop. I don't know if you've ever, gone to a restaurant and eaten filet mignon or steak. You can't sell a steak for $5 because the steak itself costs like $20. That's a bad business. So the reason why it's
you could, you may not want to eat it.
No, I mean, I'll go eat that filet mignon for $5 all day because it's got to be some sort of USDA certified.
Yeah, right.
If the business is stupid enough to sell me steak for $5, I'm going to eat it all day, right?
Yeah.
In fact, I'll give you a funny personal example. There's one of these meal delivery services that created a system where I could buy meals for $1.50 a pop. Right? That was great. I'm buying gourmet meals for $1.50 a pop. I think it's the dumbest thing ever because I knew I had been a potential investor in that business. I'd turn them down. I knew it cost them $12 to make that meal. So the fact that they're selling it to me for $1.50 and shipping it to me, greatest thing ever, right? And then I kept buying them until they went bankrupt.
Yeah.
So the reason to go back to your exact question about like why is it important for leaders to understand finance and how a business works is like a business needs to make money at the end of the day, because if it's not making money, your employees lose their jobs, your customers stop getting their product, and your shareholders lose all their money. And every leader, whether you're sitting in marketing, whether you're sitting in operations, whether you're in the CEO suite, if you don't understand how like all of the business fits together to sell some stuff at a lower cost than it took to produce that stuff, you're basically screwing up, and it's like you're leading blindly. Right? Finance is not the only thing, but if you don't understand how the mechanics and profitability of your business works, then you're leading a business blindly, and that's irresponsible.
So you play poker, right?
Yes, sir. Very competitively.
Where you live? What part of the country you live in?
I live in Philadelphia now.
All right.
A lot of casinos here.
How has playing poker influenced, I guess, your business decision making?
Sure. So poker ties together like three parts of my personality. Number one, I'm a math guy. I was a theoretical math major, very good at math. Number two, I'm competitive. And number three, I like the notion of making calculated decisions. So I don't know if you know how many of your listeners play poker, but there's this famous example. Let's imagine I got pocket aces, best hand in poker. You got two twos. Okay, hand. One would assume that the aces kill the twos every time. They're only going to kill them 4 out of 5 times. 1 out of 5 times, you're going to just crush me. And that's actually something that's really important in business, that you could do everything right. You could be dealt the strongest hand in the game. You could be way better than your competitors, and bad luck hits you, and 1 out of 5 times your competitors kill you, and you need to be prepared for that. So just like in poker, you could have the greatest thing ever. You still don't bet at all because you know bad luck could just run against you. The same is true in business. You could have this great marketing strategy. You could have a great product, and then COVID hits, and it just screws up your plan. So in business decision making, you have to be very careful about thinking about risk-adjusted outcomes or risk-prepared outcomes, saying like, I've got this great plan, everything's fit together, I've done all the analysis, I'm great, I'm positioned, but I also have to prepare for stuff that is out of my control. So you have to manage that, you have to think about that risk ex ante, but then also as part of your decision-making, make it so that no decision can sink the ship single-handedly.
Yeah. So when you first said that, I thought you said eights, not aces. And I was like, eights? I was about to go into a whole questions about
aces, but it could be the same math is actually true, by the way.
I thought aces would be better than eights.
No, but eights and aces it turns out eights versus twos and aces versus twos have the exact same probability of winning. So you could have, if you have pocket twos and I have pocket eights, I'm still a 4-1 favorite. If you have pocket twos and I have aces, I'm still a 4-1 favorite. So actually doesn't make a difference.
See, I love poker, but I don't want to have to learn all the math. And I know that's important, so I stay with the house games.
It's good at the low stakes. You don't have to study the fancy math. But if you start playing for real money, which I've avoided doing because I don't want to get into that as a lifestyle choice, then everybody there knows the math backwards and forwards.
Have you done any of the at least maybe not play in the high stakes chaos day? Have you done any of the tournaments, the big tournaments or anything like that?
I've done some of the small tournaments. My wife and I have agreed that I'm not going to enter the big tournaments unless I have a reasonable shot at winning. I think I have a reasonable shot right now at finishing in the top 10% or so, but I have no shot right now against playing against the true pros. Maybe one day I'll get there, and then I'll go see me on TV one day. I'm not there yet.
You don't know until you do it.
No, I
All
know.
right.
I know exactly how good I am, and I'm not elite level yet.
All right, Nick, I want to thank you a lot for joining us today, sharing your insights on building a culture of innovation. You've given us a lot of practical steps, real world examples that we can apply to foster an environment where new ideas thrive and innovation becomes part of our company's DNA, which we talked about. For those listening, if you want to learn more about Nick and his work at IdeaScale, be sure to connect with him on LinkedIn. Is there any other areas or ways that they might be able to reach out to you?
Yeah, so either my personal LinkedIn or go to ideascale.com. A quick plug,
Yep.
like if you're below 100 people, our software is completely free. No downloads, takes 30 seconds to set up.
I love that. And so any organization with less than 100 people, they can go to ideascale.com and literally use your software for free.
Correct. You can be a solopreneur with a Gmail address. You can click get started free, less than 30 seconds, you're up and running. No downloads required, entirely online and totally free for less than 100 people.
That's awesome. And so what we'll do is we'll put that link in our show notes too. So if people go to, it's another example. So not only go to ideascale.com and get this tool, especially if you're less than 100 people, but make sure you subscribe to Me Plus Ultra, because if you are, then you're going to get these and you're watching this show or listening to it from there. It's easy to just hit the link and then go right to you, because we're going to put it in the show description notes to make it easy for people to access. Yeah. But also LinkedIn, you're pretty active on there?
Very active, respond to 100% of messages.
Perfect. All right. So as always, don't forget to subscribe to Me Plus Ultra. You'll get access to all this stuff. And as we mentioned, ideascale.com. Also check us out on Me Plus Ultra Network, which is our YouTube channel. That way you get all the interviews packed with actionable business strategies and leadership insights. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next time on Business, Bourbon, and Cigars. Thanks, everyone.